6 years ago, a strange archival video suddenly surfaced online. The recording, made in early 1984, is heavily damaged. The picture flickers with static. Phrases are constantly cut off by hissing, as if someone had deliberately damaged the tape. On the screen, we see a lecture by an elderly Japanese scholar who has lived through severe trials, including war. He raises uncomfortable topics and calmly explains why, for example, official science will never find consciousness in the brain, and where it actually continues to live after the heart stops. He speaks of one infinite source behind all of reality and gives a simple image. Behind the endless variety of forms, there is one infinite unity. You can picture it as a blue sky. Clouds come and go, but the background is always there, without beginning or end. Any search or spiritual practice is an attempt to return to this blue sky, to the infinity from which everything else is born. From this unity come two forces he calls energy and wave. Their interaction creates the manifested world down to the level of atoms. He compares this foundation to soil. Out of it, energy passes into a more subtle sphere, prana. And from that same soil, a human being appears as a child of Father Sky and Mother Earth. The memory of all stages of evolution is already built into this path. He recalls philosophers like Plato, who spoke of a subtler world. Many people feel that behind dense matter there is a world of energy and processes. He calls such people seekers. Through religious practice, prayer, vibration, chanting hymns, mantras, people intuitively feel their way forward. At some point, a person may clearly sense that they came not only from a family and a country, but from this deeper plane. Kushi puts it like this: the whole point of the experience is to one day clearly feel, I came from there, and the memory of it is alive within me. Against this background, your personal biography, your small I, and all other labels become secondary. Then you begin to see not only the familiar storyline of your life, but also the background, the foundation. A desire appears to step back from the rough level of body and speech, to treat the body as a temple, as a temporary form. Everything that happens to you, every experience, starts to come together into one inner path.
Each physical return, each new birth, is also part of that path. Kushi reminds us that in the past, many lives were very short. People often died young. Many had to be born and die again and again until their behavior became more conscious. That is why he emphasizes, you shouldn't destroy the body with excessive smoking, coffee, and all the things that simply wear life out. He then speaks of two bodies. The first is the embryonic body, which in this life accumulates and gives off energy. When its task is complete, the person is ready for the next world. At the same time, a subtler process is underway. Another body is being formed for future existence. This is not just an air body, but a structure made of more subtle elements that then return to the soil and the elements. Kushi stresses that all this unfolds according to specific levels. He says, you could say there are 7 levels of vibration, 7 worlds or states. Each next level is wider than the previous one, and all of them are nested within each other like shells. And even now, living in the densest of these shells, through your breathing, habits, and attitude toward the body, you are preparing to move further along these invisible steps. Now let's come closer to how consciousness actually uses the body here and now. Kushi suggests looking at the body in a sober and simple way. He reminds us of the placenta. It is nothing more than a mechanical chemical device that feeds the embryo. In the same way, all our physical systems, organs, biochemistry are tools. They support the manifestation of consciousness, but they do not explain its nature and do not ultimately define it. He singles out the brain in particular. Michio Kushi suggests seeing it as a receiver, not as a source. He explains it like this: you can think of the brain as a television set. If the TV is broken, the picture disappears, but the signal itself hasn't gone anywhere. Perception works the same way. Images arise, dissolve, new ones appear, but the underlying energy is continuous. Consciousness is nourished through the body, but it is not limited to it. When you eat, you feed not only the chemistry of the organism, but also your inner center. Inside, there is a hot point, a place where energy is somehow cooked and changes its quality. If you constantly spend it on coarse pleasures, on discharge and stimulation, the vibration stays low. If you refine your food, breathing, and impressions, consciousness starts to rise, becoming wider and clearer.
But more often, something else happens. The scholar says plainly, most people get stuck in the world of the senses. We chase pleasures, fall in love, want more and more, and often end up in a downward spiral, all the way to states that can be called demonic. But we can also rise higher into the world of ideas, onto a spiritual level. The restless mind creates its own separate layer, a layer of fuss, anxiety, and plans. This is the I you most often identify with. Thoughts rush in like clouds, hiding that very blue sky of consciousness. And as long as you live only in this layer, you see only the running of desires and reactions. The conclusion suggests itself. The real importance of this life is not in what we manage to buy, build, or prove here. The main thing is its connection with what comes after. Then the logical question is, what exactly are we preparing right now? The Japanese scholar gives a very vivid comparison. He says this life is like a prenatal period, a water-like existence, before being born in another form. He puts it this way: this life is like a water life, a prenatal stage, a preparation for another form of existence. As long as we have a body, it is the main training ground, the main arena of practice. As long as you are breathing and moving, the body is not a random shell and not just a bag of chemicals. It is a simulator for consciousness. Through the body, it learns how to handle energy, desires, pain, and choice. Here, on the densest level, you are literally sewing the fabric of the next reality. Kushi identifies three main sources of energy we are constantly connected to. The first is air. Every inhale and exhale passes through the central axis of the body. The second is earth, that is, food, from which the body is built and its strength maintained. The third is subtle impressions, thoughts, emotions, images, sounds, everything that enters you through the senses and remains inside as a trace. From these three streams, air, food, and impressions, the spiritual body gradually takes shape. He compares it to an embryo that in a sense overlays the physical one. This is the body of a different quality growing within and around us. It is born from extremely subtle, almost electromagnetic masses, from countless tiny units that you collect every day, through your reactions, your words, your habits.
In another sense, this subtle body is your real you, not your passport, not your name, not your biography. Through speech and thought, it becomes more clearly formed, more human-like, already on another level. When you say something, make decisions, go through experiences, you are not just wearing out your nerves, you are drawing in more detail, the outlines of this invisible form. When death comes, the physical mechanism stops. Breath no longer moves through the axis of the body. The heart no longer pumps blood. But, according to Kushi, that is not the end. For some time after physical death, hours or days, depending on the circumstances, the subtle body is still connected to this atmosphere. The coarse elements quietly return to where they came from, to water, oils, and earth. If the departure from life is natural, the transition follows a certain order. The scholar describes it like this: life as a source flows into another channel, into another world, what many traditions call the world of God. After such a birth there, a process of recognition begins. We can see our former families as if from the outside. We can perceive other spirits. A new field of perception opens. There, you no longer live in a heavy body. You are a being made of subtler matter, and your consciousness tunes itself to those who are similar in vibration. Communication and synchronization begin at another level. From this field, over time, life consciousness prepares itself further, moving from channel to channel, from one style of existence to another. What here seemed like a random personality or habits, there appears as a specific quality of your subtle form. The researcher emphasizes that in the subtle world, response is almost instantaneous. There you don't have to spend years building what you think about. He explains it like this: in the subtle world, response is immediate. Think of peace, and peace appears. Think of hatred, hatred appears. Love, and love comes. That is why he calls that level more spacious. It is not physical, and the laws of density are different. Vibrations respond much faster, and when you see with this airy body, you directly perceive that plane. There, you can no longer hide behind a mask. Your intentions are almost immediately visible, because they instantly create a matching environment.
In that world, words and intentions become especially powerful. Michio Kushi gives a tough example. If you speak with a bad intention, even just fantasizing about ruining someone's life or relationship, that inner scene alone already lowers your vibration. He puts it this way: even without any outward action, intention on that level is already considered an act. In your mind, you create an image, an intention, and in the subtle world, it is already taking place. From here comes his warning: a word does not disappear. It goes out and keeps vibrating in the subtle field, leaving an imprint there. That's why we need to handle speech and intention more carefully than we usually do in everyday chatter. Everything said and thought is recorded, not only in other people's memory, but also in the structure of your own spiritual body. Over time, everything dense dissolves. Not only the physical shell disappears, but also the surface chatter of the mind, all these endless musts: I want, I'm afraid. What remains is not the noise, but the deep will. The Japanese philosopher emphasizes, in the end, it is this will that moves us, not random thoughts. This will gathers, from life to life, your overall vector, what you were truly drawn to, what you put at the center, what you chose when no one was watching. That requires a huge reserve of time, and in his picture of the universe, we really are given that reserve. Time is given space so that all of this can happen. Time returns us to the source again and again. Through many lives, through centuries, life and consciousness move toward unity with peace, glory, wholeness. From this point of view, Kushi says, there are those who see the world of experience much more broadly. For them, a mirror world is open, from which it is clear where a person will go after this life. There it is visible who is mistaken, who is closer to what is right, and who is simply standing still. Sometimes while someone is crying bitterly here, it is already calmer on that level. They can see that one is going this way, another that way, and the picture is less chaotic than it seems from below. We, down here, go on arguing and judging. It's easy for us to say, "You're bad, he's bad, they're bad." It seems as if someone is completely black and someone else absolutely light. But the Japanese researcher calls this an illusion. He says plainly, there is no one who is 100% good and no one who is 100% bad. Everyone has both. In this sense, each person is black somewhere and white somewhere.
If you strip away the outer shell and look deeper, it turns out that everyone carries the same human mix. When we look only horizontally, we see a crowd of people running back and forth. We compare, envy, despise. But if we try to raise the camera higher, the picture changes. People start to look more like figures in similar clothing, just at different stages: children, youth, adults, the elderly. There are many differences, but the humanity is one, and each soul moves along its own orbit, never standing still for a second. When you hear about orbits of souls, levels, and worlds, it's easy to fly off into theory. Kushi speaks in a very down-to-earth way. Everything is decided by your ordinary days: how you breathe, what you eat, what you think about, what words you say. It is through these small things that you twist the spirals of your fate, upward or downward. He says the goal here is actually quite earthly: a clear, healthy mind. When the spirit consciousness is bright, order comes inside. Plus and minus stop fighting, the vibrations settle, and a person becomes more transparent, less heavy. The Japanese scholar puts it like this: the main thing here is a clear mind. Your spirit consciousness should be healthy and bright. When the mind clears, its vibration becomes orderly. Plus and minus come into harmony. The things that help maintain this state are the simplest ones. If you love playing the piano, singing, skiing, doing a hobby, wonderful. Such activities balance you, release tension, and let the soul unfold a little. But Kushi reminds us it's important not to forget the main thing, not to burn through your life on entertainment alone, but to preserve energy so you can continue the inner journey instead of just chasing the next dose of impressions. He gives a very simple example of perception. Imagine a person walking along a factory road, surrounded by concrete and dirt. Suddenly, he picks up a single flower from the roadside, takes it home, puts it in front of himself, and writes poetry about it. The teacher explains it like this: imagine a person walking along a factory road, picking up a flower, writing a poem about it, and placing it on the table in front of him. In one flower, you can see something universal. This example looks almost childish, but it holds a key. One person sees just a weed, another sees a small manifestation of the universal. One mind is full of garbage, the other has room for silence and attention. And this is not a gift from nowhere, but the result of what a person has been filling themselves with for years. Kushi describes the modern world in fairly harsh terms. In large countries, he says, there are too many things, stimuli, information. It's easy to cram your head full to the brim. Minds become overloaded and scattered. A person is constantly reacting, but hardly has time to be aware. Yet when you die, it doesn't matter whether you were American, European, Chinese. All these divisions, flags, and statuses stay here. He even breaks down our names, to which we are so attached as conditional labels. In the West, it is customary to put the given name before the surname: John Smith, John Allen. In Japan, it's the opposite: last name first, then given name. In one culture, he is called Michio Kushi, in another, Kushi Michio. His teacher was known as George Osawa, although in Japanese, he was called something quite different. The conclusion is simple: names, systems, National forms are just symbols, not our true essence. We are shaped far more deeply by our environment. Different food, climate, habits sculpt the brain and nervous system year after year. In some places, logic develops more, in others, feeling. Somewhere, people become more excitable, elsewhere more calm. The Japanese researcher says it plainly. Different food, climate, and habits form different tendencies in the brain and nervous system. In 2 or 3 generations, the environment strongly molds consciousness, higher or lower, but always for the task of that environment. From here comes the talk about spirals. According to him, we are constantly creating spirals of energy. One twists upward, another downward. Every thought, every action is like a seed thrown into a vast field that some call God, others the universe, destiny. The more of a certain kind of seed you throw in there, the stronger the pattern becomes. It is no longer just a single act, but a spiral that you yourself will have to enter. Food plays a huge role in this picture. Kushi doesn't reduce everything to a menu, but he doesn't soften the message either. You can't endlessly eat and drink whatever you like and then be surprised that your mind is muddy, your character twitchy, and your body falling apart. Simple, natural, whole food and clean water give one type of vibration. Overstimulating, refined, artificial food gives another. This is not morality, this is physics. You literally become what you stuff yourself with.
It's the same with music and impressions. Some music refines and calms, makes consciousness softer and deeper. Other music just exhausts you, tears your attention apart, and leaves anxiety behind. Books, films, news, social feeds, all of this is also food, only for the mind. We often treat it as nothing serious, but in his logic, everything you let in will sooner or later show up in the state of your consciousness. That is why he raises the topic of discipline. To do something real, inside or outside, you need to be ready to accept a certain pressure. Take in less harmful, more nourishing, say no somewhere, endure something somewhere to build a stronger center. Michio Kushi puts it like this: to do something real, you have to be ready to suffer a little. That is, to accept discipline. Take in less of what harms you, more of what nourishes you. Accept a certain pressure in order to build a stronger center. He sees the same spiral pattern in society. Power and opposition, party and counterparty, conflict and counteraction. This is not just politics. The same thing happens in families and inside a single person. Our clashes often only highlight your real needs and weak spots. In this sense, even difficult situations become part of consciousness training. People dream of a better world, a world without wars, with more justice, with a more honest society. But he says such dreams cannot be fulfilled in one lifetime or one generation. Different methods are needed: scientific, practical, spiritual. And most importantly, you have to know yourself and at least roughly understand which spiral you're moving along. Sometimes the best way to stop a negative spiral is not to join the game, not to react to provocation, not to get drawn into tricky and destructive schemes, not to run away into the mountains just out of exhaustion. He recalls a proverb: a saint who lives in the mountains is one level, and a saint who stays in the city among people is another level entirely. He says it like this: a saint in the mountains is a small saint. A saint in the city is a great saint. From here come the images of the river and the lotus. The river does not choose which water it likes. It flows and cleanses everything that falls into it. The lotus grows out of mud, from murky water, but remains pure. Kushi warns, if you keep repeating, "This is bad, that's bad, I can't stand this, I can't stand that," you harden and lose strength. If you learn to accept, affirm, and transform what comes, you keep depth and aliveness inside. At the same time, he doesn't hide the fact that doubts and confusion arise on this path. Hundreds of thoughts come up. Do it, don't do it, speak.
be silent, leave, stay. The mind becomes cloudy, everything seems wrong. In such moments, he advises not to run from yourself, but to let this state show itself. You can write, pouring your thoughts onto paper. You can meditate. You can simply sit in silence until the inner noise begins to subside. And here the image of sky and clouds returns again. Thoughts are clouds. They come and go. The sky is consciousness itself. The task is not to forcibly chase the clouds away, but to remember the sky behind them. Through simple practices, breathing, singing, cleaner food, conscious actions, you can at least sometimes touch this state. And, as Kushi emphasizes, he is not asking you to blindly believe. He says, watch how all this affects your mind and life. If you look attentively, you will see for yourself that consciousness is much wider than the body, passport, or country, and that your everyday habits, quietly, day after day, create the world you will wake up into next. Michio Kushi's image of the blue sky does not remain just a metaphor. He offers a very simple meditation to step out of the noise of thoughts for a few minutes and feel this state directly. He asks you to start with the body. Sit quietly, straighten your back, place your hands so that the posture itself tunes you to silence. The Japanese scholar gives a direct instruction. Sit down, left palm facing up, right palm facing down. Sit in silence in this position. Another time you can switch the hands, left down, right up. But the main point of this meditation is this. By meditation, I now mean entering a state of inner emptiness. The goal of this practice is to enter a state where there is no endless inner commentary, not repeating, I am meditating, not scolding yourself for thinking, not telling yourself, I must not think. For at least a few minutes, you simply don't think. In words, this sounds easy, but the mind immediately raises a wave of images, memories, fantasies, and a person is automatically carried away by them.
The scientist stresses the task is not to crush this flow by force. Each time you gently return to not thinking, to this inner zero, you keep the meditation short, 5 to 10 minutes. Then you open your eyes and a new image, a new feeling appears. The old flow may still keep running a little, but now as material for work and creativity, not as a background of anxiety. He compares meditation without thoughts to coming back to a clear sky after you yourself have filled it with clouds. Before, you identified with the cloud. Now you see the sky again. In this state, the previous layers and piles can be erased or rebuilt. You are already able to paint a new sky and new clouds, a new image of yourself and the world. If you want to change this image, Kushi suggests using that same state of silence. In the moment when thoughts have stepped back for a short while, you connect with the power of earth and the power of heaven and very clearly formulate what you want. He describes it like this. When you create in such a state, you connect with the power of heaven and the power of earth. You attach the desired image to this greater power, to what you truly want to bring into being. In this way, you become one with heaven and earth and simply think clearly, I want to do this. And this is exactly how it works. In his view, meditation stops being an escape from life. It becomes a way to clear the inner sky, see your real request, and quietly tie it to those invisible forces he has been talking about all along. Dear friends, do you have any strange childhood memories or dreams that feel not from this life, as if they were fragments of something from before? Share your stories in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please support my channel with a like and don't forget to subscribe. I wish you good health and a good mood. See you soon in the next episodes.